This brilliance, let's say, that pops up sometimes, hopefully often, is truly rare, but it can be educated in a sense. Mm-hmm. There are many rituals or ways of positioning yourself in the place to receive this kind of thing, or at least have a chance of receiving it. Like when I do copy things, I'll just start, say, naming, okay? Or I'm trying to find a tagline or whatever. I keep writing down, I write down, and then from there, I enter this almost mindless state, that I just keep writing down and something good will come out and I'll start from there.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm Britton Stepetic, and this is Low-Key Legends, the show where I sit down with creative legends to fish out nuggets of wisdom that you can take away on your creative journey. Today, I am joined across the screen by the dashingly handsome Italian man, Filippo, the head of the studio at Adoratorio. They're working with the likes of Netflix, Guicci, Maserati, crafting exquisite brands and digital experiences. Phil, welcome to the show. How the hell are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great, and I'm very, very glad to be here. Thanks so much. It's so great after a little while to actually be able to talk. I'm sure we will have a blast tonight. Hopefully, we won't go too long.
I feel like that's never the case because I like to ramble, and when there's alcohol and coffee involved, I'm kind of like an overcaffeinated rabbit in general. So we'll see where it goes.
I think you'll have a match with me, yeah.
But I mean, in true agency fashion, your title is so cryptic. What does head of studio mean, and what does your day-to-day job look like?
So I think head of the studio grew out of something else, right? I started before being called head of the studio. I was a project manager and a ghostwriter, as I like to call myself. In general, it simply means that I'm in a very particular kind of studio where, of course, I handle project managing, but mostly talk with clients, which is the worst part of project managing. I handle copywriting and strategy as well as part of our direction. I think that sums it up. But head of the studio was more fun. So people ask me what I do, and I'm still incapable of telling them, but still fun. Yeah.
I think you nailed it. I mean, I understand what you do based on that. I don't understand what I do on a day-to-day basis, but
I think mostly, like, if you tell someone who's not from the industry, okay, that you're, I don't know, a developer, they still want to understand what you're doing. And so, and at the same time, people from the industry know that names are all over the place and people will call themselves whatever, right? So you probably can do anything at this point in terms of naming.
Yeah, head of fridge clean out.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a head. You can be the glasses of the studio.
Yeah, whatever you want.
No, yeah, but I think it was more in setting me in a role. Okay, that could mean I'm not a partner, but I'm into the position to take some choices actually. So I have some kind of actionable title with clients and stuff.
I was doing a little research. I found like there was like a CSS Design Awards article about the naming of the studio.
Yeah, you know what? It was super fun actually. The first this brings memories. I didn't even remember this. So when I interviewed at Adoratorio 7 years ago now, okay, I was so we were in this very small studio, beautiful street, but very small studio. I was looking for the studio, and I noticed I was like 20 minutes early, and so I was checking on my phone. I said, okay, let's get prepared for this interview, right? And I was checking. I just Googled Adoratorio and stuff, and I found the article you're speaking about. Okay, and I think it says, which is the true story, by the way, that Adoratorio came from a song by Vedena. Okay, which is an Italian group, quite underground kind of sound, and it's also it came as well from Cami, in this case, one of our co-founder and creative director, and she thought about it because she wanted a word that was that you could remember, and also a new word in itself. Because Adoratorio, you must know that in Italy, when we go to say kindergarten and primary school, elementary school, and stuff like that, we go to the church, okay, and they have like after schools and stuff like that, and it's called oratorio. Okay.
Mhm.
And adora means I adore. Okay, very simple. And so mixing the two, it creates this familiar feeling with the word, but also something that's grandiose. So I
Mhm.
think it was probably one of the best. I think naming is the worst thing you can work on in this industry. It's hyper hard, far harder than branding, than digital and stuff. And I think in that case, Cami and Danea truly came up with something special. Yeah.
Well, that's so true because I mean, like naming something that you want to have forever, but that also isn't taken by some other company or who owns something. Like I'm just waiting for the day to get like a cease and desist from like Nissan because they own like Rogue or something.
Uh,
Or
the fun story here, and hopefully it won't happen. Okay, but the studio, when it was in the very very early stages, it was just like the two founders and maybe someone, but I think only them. It was named Kitsune. Okay, like
Mhm.
fox in Japanese, right? And they got a cease and desist by Maison Kitsune in Paris. Okay,
Uh-huh.
because they also registered the name for agencies. Say, I don't remember the legalese for these, but it was like advertising and stuff. So they got the cease and desist, and they came up with Adoratorio. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it's weird. Did it ever happen to you to? I think so, to work on branding, but also naming for one of your clients.
It hasn't. Ooh, it hasn't happened yet. Fingers crossed. I try to check out stuff. I try to like advise
I think
clients,
that's one of
startups.
I think that's one of the most difficult things. I mean, it happened a few times to us, to me as well as a professional or with family and stuff like that. It came up a few times, and that was so and so. It happened as during with Adoratorio as well, and of course we had to do the branding and everything. And I think the only way, first of all, you have to sell the name so hard to actually make it work. You have to be completely convinced that it will work. And
Mhm.
also, I believe that naming itself, but it is just like branding. You never show just the logo. You show everything. Actually, most of the times we start with showing the mock-ups and everything, okay, for the branding, and then we show the logo and all the designer stuff with lines and grids and stuff. But that's for naming as well. We never propose a naming without the whole ecosystem behind it. Otherwise, it will never sell because it's just words.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so yeah, a very very hard job. I'd prefer not to do it. I love when people come. Okay, this is our company. This is the name. I'll judge for myself if to me it resonates or not. But then we just do the branding. That's quite easier, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. If we're not being like paid for it, we just cross our fingers and hope it doesn't backfire in the end.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the classic kind of project that it can happen that you just get stuck on that and you never move and you say 2 months over that then name, and you simply won't find it because yeah, it's a very hard task. I prefer
Oh,
not to. I'm a copywriter, but I prefer not to. I have sheets and sheets of paper of names that I threw away. So
oh yeah, exactly. It's just like save it for, I don't know, your pet project or your personal like side hustle, but it's
yeah,
definitely super hard.
I also don't know what's your relationship with this concept. I'm in time, in time, like I'm 70 years old. But in time, I learned, or actually, I started believing that when I write a lot and sketch a lot when I work
Mm.
on a project. Okay, and I noticed that when you have an idea, you say, okay, this is an intelligent idea. Okay, it can work here. It's always wrong to say, okay, I'll stash it here and I'll come back to it later, right? I don't do that, never. I prefer to just say, okay, I'm not doing it because it's not on scope, it's not the right project or something. But if I think it has potential, I truly believe that you should take that thing that you come up, be it copy wise, be it design wise or anything, and just put it down right at that moment. At least that's how I work. When I have breakthroughs, I call them, when you just light up and say, okay, yeah, this is the thing, right? I hate to put it away because I will never forget. I write a lot. I have sheets and sheets of great ideas that will never see the light of day simply
Yeah.
because I didn't take the chance and just write it, be it an article, be it a post or whatever.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's how you approach things as well, or.
Oh, absolutely. Because I do think like there's this idea or concept that Stephen Pressfield writes about in his book, The War of Art. And it's about like the muse coming and kind of like endowing you with a little bit of inspiration, if you will. And I think like if the moment strikes and you do feel inspired to do whatever, it almost like doesn't matter what task you're on. You should just kind of go at it in the moment, because eventually that inspiration or that flash or that thought is going to start to dwindle like a fire, and then it'll just completely snuff out. And then you won't have the same energy, the same mindset, the same ideas around it. So it's better just to like, just let's say if you only have 30 minutes, just give it that 30 minutes, like super hard, full out, and you'll always get something better. I guess it's like the same thing. It's like you're in the flow and in that flow state. So you might as well just like do that opposed to like doing what you don't want to do because you're energized by the idea.
I truly think that you can ask anyone who has been or will be on this podcast, okay, and you ask them that you give them this context, right, and they'll all say to you that those 30 minutes, most of the times they do the work that they do in the whole day, okay, and probably like for 5 hours they're just there thinking of what a tiny portion of what they came up in those 30 minutes, right? At the same time, I don't want to sound cliche, because these are things you experience, we all experience in this industry and in any creative industry, I think, and not just creative in the sense of painting and everything, but even strategy and stuff. This brilliance, let's say, that pops up sometimes, hopefully often, is truly rare, but it can be educated in a sense. I think there are many rituals or ways of positioning yourself in the place to receive this kind of thing, or at least have a chance of receiving it. Like when I do copy things, I'll just start, say, naming, okay, or I'm trying to find a tagline or whatever. I keep writing down, I write down, and then from there I enter this almost mindless state, that I just keep writing down and something good will come out and I'll start from there with that thing. So it's a bit of both. As an Italian, we're constantly during school and everything. Oh, how did Dante write the Divine Comedy, the Divina Commedia? Oh, of course, the Muse, Beatrice and stuff. It can be harmful to just think, oh well, I'll just wait for my muse, and up until the point, I'm just rolling my fingers, and it's actually a problem. But it's also very beautiful and very true. Because that enlightenment that you have towards a single task or towards whatever in that moment is one of the best feelings that you can have in working in any creative environment.
You have to show up every single day. You have to go through the mundane drudgery and kind of just do the work and do the time. And it's just like finding little habits, little things that make the process of getting to that either flow state or like calling or summoning the muse like that much easier. But like none of your, let's say in your case, like the thousands of sentences, taglines, copy that you've written has gone to waste. It's just informing like the things that you are going to do in the future. And it just almost like compounds in a way where it's like, okay, I have all of that. I'm not going to like literally throw it out, but I'm going to like somehow store it in my mental Rolodex for something else down the road.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say I stole that technique, okay, from Thomas Kemeny. Okay, he wrote this fantastic book. Let me look it up because I'm very bad with names right now. He's a copywriter, fantastic copywriter from the States. And Junior, the book is called Junior: Writing Your Way Ahead in Advertising. Fantastic book, very short, truly beautiful. I place it on the side of David Ogilvy.
Right.
Advertising, okay, that's the level for me. Super beautiful narrative and everything, very short. And that's how he started coming up with things. He's a copywriter, but worked, of course, if you work in the big agencies in the States, at least that's our perception, you generally work on copywriting is like the creative director is a copywriter, and then you have TV and everything like that, TV spots. And so it was a beautiful read, and I stole that from him, and it actually works. So it was worth I don't know, what was it, like 15 euros of a book.
Honestly, that may be my next pickup, because I'm always looking to improve like the writing around my work, because I think the words equally if not more so, are just as important as the visuals, if not more so, because like the words are what people are looking at in order to gauge what the hell this company, brand, organization does. The images just kind of inform that. So, I mean, if you don't have good copywriting, people are going to bounce off the website. They're not going to stay. They may be visually captivated, but honestly, I feel like the story, the hook, the idea, that's what really kind of resonates with people. And then the visual side can be some compelling kind of, I guess, companionship to that.
And this works for books too, and that's why this one, Junior, really caught me. Is that there are a ton of, say, fantastic, incredible visual outlets, references, and resources. Even in books, you can buy so many books. Every time we see something at the studio, or I see something of say grids, or we're talking about branding design or anything, and we look at it and it's beautiful, we just buy it, okay, and it will come in handy in the future. It's very much harder to find something on copywriting that's clever, that gives you even actionable tips. Say this book is not, say, a guide, okay, it's just him being so. I'm also a sucker from narrative. I love Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's one of my favorite books. Just incredibly clever narration, right? Writing in itself. And I think it's far easier also in our industry to find fantastic designer, but not clever messages. And then that translates into stories, right? When you're working on experiential anything, be it website, be it an installation or anything, I truly believe that this is something that we don't care about enough in the industry. Or even if we do, we don't place the glam on it. Let's say, like you see in Mad Men, when you watch the TV show Mad Men, you see that copywriting is like the best thing in the world, okay? And right now, instead, we have this huge, with merit, I love designer and I could never do their work, but we have this huge focus on designers, but sometimes we forget the importance of a striking message, simply. Yeah,
it goes into like selling the message too. So it's obviously, it all works together as like a beautiful ecosystem, but like even the words that you say during the presentation matter, because it's selling the idea, the concept, and backing up all of the things that you're seeing visual. Like, yes, the animations could get someone to that, oh shit, this is fucking amazing moment, but it still has to have like the legs. You still have to sell the concept. It still has to make sense. It still has to hit goals. And I feel like words help to do that so effectively.
I mean, you see that. I was just thinking of a light in the boots from you, Rogue, right? Well, I mean, that's a story, so it's a very easy example to bring up. But even if the visuals are fantastic, you're going to remember something because of its message, right? Together with the visuals make it so much easier. And of course, it's easier to remember something that's visually beautiful rather than something that is shitty and just with a beautiful catchphrase, you know. But I think in the assertions of the two, you actually reach something that's amazing, and that's rare. I think I've seen it like in my professional career in Adoratorio together maybe 2 or 3 times. But when it happens, it's like, okay, yeah, this is the project that I'll speak about to my friends.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that magic moment, because like sometimes you're just like, oh, I'm just trying to like do a marketing site or sell some shit, and it's like, yeah, we can make it cool, but I don't love it as much as kind of like this amazing experiential thing, and like there's this history to it and like all of this depth. And I love those projects where you're like, I can't wait to tell all my friends about this launches, and I'm still telling them when it isn't even launched yet. So
yeah, exactly. The more we grow, the rarer that is. I think we're turning in Adoratorio right now. I mean, we're leaving the agency, and I think you can see that as well. You pass so many stages, and sometimes you backtrack, and sometimes the natural evolution of the studio itself brings you to a point that you were before, but in a different state, in a sense, right? And I think those kind of projects are very rare. And when you grow so much, it happens to many agencies. I'm lucky not being in one of those. And also, you just had, well, not just, I think it was a month or something ago, but you had Dust from Locomotive here. And people like that and studios like that are the ones that maybe grew a lot. When you grow a lot, it's so easy to fall into the pitfall of just doing like boring stuff because it makes money. Because boring stuff makes money. That's how the world works, right? And that they have the perseverance to survive, do good financially, but also do things that you can speak about and be proud of, right? And I think that's also, I was mentioning loco, but it's the same. I think it's very true for anyone who you've invited to this podcast. I think you're a more happy person if you do stuff you like, right?
Oh, it's true. And it's like finding that ultimate balance of like things that are gonna pay the bills, but also things that just also build the awareness around the studio, that attract people that you want to be hiring, that are projects that are exciting that people want to work on in the studio. But ultimately, you got to be profitable so that the studio stays around.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a nice battle and a daily battle of that. But I think that's even the fun part. You know, having to explain why you are doing something, or I think that's very creative in itself, in finding that the thread that helps you do both of those things. You know, survive on one side. I like to say survive, and then the other, do things you're proud of, because that's pretty much what makes it at the end of the day. Of course, if you do better than surviving, that's even better. But
let's keep on that same topic, because like since joining the studio in 2017, it seems like you've helped the studio to evolve and grow along that journey. And now you're up to, is it 15 people at Adoratorio?
Correct.
Wow.
I joined when we were like 6.
Yeah.
Okay, and now 15. It doesn't. I mean, it was very natural, and also we are not like hiring very. I think last year it was the biggest shock in a way, because we hired 2 people together. Okay, and it's a very difficult process hiring people and maintaining culture, in a sense. I truly don't like the word culture, I won't lie. I think it gives all these very like MLM scheme vibes, in a sense, but it's very true. It's just following the same vision, right? If there's one thing that made me fall in love with the concept of Adoratorio, right, and then I think helped me push it forward, hopefully, is that we are all striving, each and every one, okay, and it's 15, so now it's a good number. We're all striving to do great stuff under the name Adoratorio. There's not like these, many of us, me first and foremost, are sometimes very, I wouldn't say self-centered people, but very straightforward, and that they like to pursue their ideas, right? And that goes for many of us. But the fact that you can have this kind of people together working towards a shared objective without bumping heads each and every minute, okay, I think this is incredibly rare. I've never found it anywhere else, and that's what made me fall in love with our objective, pretty much, and with the team and everyone.
Well, how do you kind of build that? We'll take the word culture off the table, but like internal synergy. How do you all get on the same mission, visions, and values in that way?
I think we have similar objectives. Okay, we have similar objectives. We have very different taste. Okay, in design, in everything. We know what works. We know what we like, and but we also want to create something that we like, that people will like. Okay, it's 2 things. You can create something that people will like that you don't like, and you have the resources to do, or you can create something that you like and hopefully people would like as well. And that's the other thing. I think just having similar objectives is the point. We have a similar objective, first of all, that we like living well, okay, in the sense that we like a very relaxed work environment. We like stretches, in a sense. We like, sometimes we're very chill in the studio. Maybe we are quite offloaded of work, in a sense, or we are very calm. And on the other time, instead, we rush very hard, because it's not that we have to finish things, but sometimes it happens in the studio that you have many projects you have to close, or you have to bring to the next step and stuff like that. But I think we're very suited, every one of us, to this kind of environment. And this is the kind of environment you live when you work with other people and for clients, right? If it's your company, maybe you can program things even better, because that never happens. That was a lie. But yeah, I think that's the point. It's shared objectives, and believing that the studio itself it's bigger than only us. I don't know if that's the same at Rogue, but I think so, because it's the only way studios really work. I saw so many fantastic studios fall apart, right? Because personalities grew too much and grew over the studio. And at the same time, I saw so many fall apart, but just because there wasn't a strong enough vision and a strong enough shared objective, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's the thing. It's like trying to build that balance. And Rogue is interesting because the team's all over the world, so we're remote, multinational, and also just like different cultures of everyone and like where they're from. But how do you get them to work together in a way that is autonomous for each and every person, but also equitable for each and every person and respects kind of their individual way of working? I mean, I think that I would have an easier time doing this if we were all together in one room, but it's kind of a creative challenge doing it on this kind of worldly scale. But ultimately, I think you can do it. You just have to be a little bit clever about it. I think one thing is just like it's the intentionality and kind of just maintaining that vision, that through line, making sure you're all getting along and like working with each other, that we're pushing each other to make better work each and every day. And if we have that sort of alignment where we like the work, we like each other, we're pushing each other, then it really has kept us together for the 4 years of Rogue, and hopefully can expand a little bit more this coming year. There's been kind of a boom after kind of like Christmas. People want to do work now. I mean, that's the natural ebbs and flows of the work cycle, but trying to be like strategic about the money coming in, where to place it, who we'd want to work with, internal projects that we would want to do to keep getting our name out there, and just like hopefully, because last year was a little bit slow, grow a little bit this year.
One of the very difficult things I've experienced, and I think and Camilla, our co-founders, experienced far more, is the ability to say no. The ability on one side, and you only have the ability to say no, okay, the actual ability when you're doing fantastic. Okay, that's the only time you can say, okay, no, I'm not doing this because it doesn't resound with me. If you're about to go under, you just take what comes, right? But sometimes a bit cliche, but saying no to specific projects, okay, is what makes you first of all build that vision and that shared and reach those shared objectives that I mentioned earlier. And on this, on the second step, it's actually what makes you, in a sense, right? I'll give you an example. It happens, and to actually say this, I say this because we learned, let's say, by experience, pretty much. We said yes to many projects that we felt mostly in the early years, but it still happened even a few years ago, to say yes to projects that we didn't feel were actually our fit. Or also, I'll open another parenthesis. Sorry. I'm a strong believer in growing because you do things that you're not able to do currently. Okay. Yeah. But in accepting or pursuing projects that maybe you're not completely able to do currently, you have to pursue the way that you want to the path that you want to persevere, right? Sorry for this very convoluted thought, but that's to say, it happens so many times that a few times that we said yes to projects that weren't our fit, that were a little bit beyond, more than a little bit beyond what we were capable of doing at the time. Okay, and they were also not on the right path. Let's say it was what we wanted to become and what we're now, right? And that's when shit hit the fan. Let's say I literally in my 7 years, I have 2 moments, I think, which I won't bring up, but I have 2 moments that I said, okay, yeah, we fucked up big time. We knew this was wrong from the start. We tried our best, but if it's not your thing, I mean, even when you do your best, you're not giving 100%. You're giving like 80,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's very difficult to choose what you can do. And also when so many, and sorry, and now I'll tie up to your topic, when so many projects are coming in, maybe after a drought, okay, or even in normal times, it's very difficult to manage the workload that you want to have on one side. Of course, you want to push, but also you don't want to hire carelessly, right?
Yeah.
Or call up people in the team that need time to get in the flow, need time to understand how you do things, what's your expected quality level, and also how you manage things in general. I think that in your workflow, being worldwide compared to what we do here in Italy, like we have 15 people. We're all in Brescia, in northern Italy, close to Milan, and we have like a 3-2 or 2-3 division for smart working, which is like 2 days to 3 days to 2.5. It really depends in the studio, and the rest you can be wherever, right? And I don't really like to say that I manage people, because that's like literally 10% of my job, because having hired so carefully in time, okay, and giving time to people, first of all, to be thought, and second of all, to get in the flow, really helps them manage themselves. I truly like, and that's something that you build in time, I think, to just say, okay, these the things that we got to do. Let's say I'm talking to my 3D artist. We're going to, this is what we need to achieve. What time do you need? Okay, this is the time you need, maybe 2 weeks. Okay, I'll say, okay, you have, I don't know, 2 weeks, you have 16 days. I'll go tell the clients, and then I'll let them work, and I'll maybe check in 10 days, right? And that's a kind of relationship and trust that you can only build, first of all, after bumping heads a few times, but also because you esteem the people that work with you, and you know that they're as focused on the goal as you are, and that makes our job, I think, the easiest it can be. What I go around, and you are even more in that position than me, in having to bring all the threads together, okay, and pack up the project and ship it, right? I always say to friends, I brought a few friends into this world that do a similar job, let's say in terms of PM and stuff like that. I told them, we're doing the easiest job in our world. What we need to do is talk with clients, okay? We have to pump up the works that others do and work with fantastic people. That's all you need to do when you're doing that kind of role, right? That's just part of my job, but that's my most stressing and favorite. That's the easiest job in the world. You do nothing aside from selling things others did in a very beautiful way. You have a fantastic package, right? And you just gotta go to the client or whoever and say, okay, this is the package, this is beautiful, just take it. Compliments to the team.
Well, one, it's a super fun job that we have, sometimes very stressful, but I think we do it to ourselves. But I'm curious, what makes a specific hire a good hire? What are you looking for when you're looking for people? And then I guess the other question that I have is, if you're looking outside of Brescia, how do you, I guess, convince people to come to the studio, to come to Brescia from other places, either in Italy or the world, and join the Adoratorio family?
So I think on one side, we're lucky enough that our work speaks for ourselves, in the sense that we are, again, lucky for us, and thanks to everyone who's writing us. We try to reply to each and every email. We receive so many. We are in a position where we receive a lot of how do you call them?
Like inquiries.
Inquiries to join the team, simply. So we're super lucky for that. Many times when people come from abroad, okay, it's just because they want to come live in Italy, and they come to the studio itself. We have these very this was my first hire in Adoratorio, and so it's a sweet memory for me. Romain, he was studying at Ethique in Paris, okay. He dropped by for his internship during university. Then he went to Locomotives, that we were speaking about earlier, is either last year or the year after he graduated, and then he came back for 2.5, 3 other years after that in Brescia, simply because from Paris he fell in love with Brescia for some reason, and he moved here. He still lives here, by the way, so that's fantastic. But generally, it's very difficult for us to integrate, let's say, an English or other language, let's say, workflow within the studio in Brescia, simply because we grew up very tight, and we have a that's a very Italian thing. You see that my hand gestures. You see, we speak. We don't speak a lot. We just understand each other because we're Italian, and we have I don't know. We speak with our minds, something like that. But also because in Italy, it's quite hard to have a great English education, let's say, in the language. And so we generally tend to work with, when we need to work with freelancers that are abroad, right? At the same time, that's the reason why we started looking abroad to open another office. And that's what we're going to do, actually, hopefully in September in Amsterdam.
Cool.
Yeah. That's a great project we've been cooking for like 4 years now. 4 years ago was when the idea popped up and said, okay, yeah, maybe this is feasible. It will be feasible in the future. In the last 2 years, it became more and more of a reality. And now this year, it's actually becoming a reality. We're trying to start slow, in a sense, with a very little studio with few people and everything. But we think that's the actual way, first of all, to honor all the people who follow us and want to join up in Adoratorio in one way. And also, it's such a waste. We every time I see a great CV, a great portfolio, a great cover letter from someone who's clearly smart, okay, I hate that I cannot have them join the studio, right? And that's simply because the workflow and how we grew is too different. And Italy is Italy. We need to probably move abroad to actually make that work. And to answer your question, as you can see, I think that's very, very Italian. I like to take very great leaps.
I love it. I love it.
Questions, but soft skills are what we look for the most. Of course, when we're talking about technical roles, we take a great consideration of the capabilities, but that's not the main, and this is for real, that's not the main skill we're looking at. We look for, of course, taste on one side, and on the other is how they reach out. The last 3, I think, hirings we did in Adoratorio, an interaction designer, a graphic designer, and a developer, they were all brought up. They didn't have the best curriculum that we received, okay? They simply were fantastic. We read the email and we're like, okay, yeah, you're joining up. Come and drop by. We have an aperitif. We talk. We bump heads. That's pretty much our interview process. It generally starts with an aperitif, and then another day we have an actual interview. Because I think that the studio, the mood in the studio truly makes everything. If we are happy, even in difficult times, to go at the studio in the morning, that means we're doing good. Otherwise, it's not so good. And I think that's the thing, and that's why we hire so little in time.
Honestly, I think that's a good strategy because it's pretty easy to hire too fast or hire fast and then have to kind of fire fast. I've always done it the kind of way where you bring someone on for a project or like test someone out on something so small, and then you do something else that's small, and then you do something that's a little bit bigger, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you've been hanging out for like a year. I guess you're part of the team.
Yeah, you said it exactly, and you shoot the arrow right at the point. I think in trying things, mostly for, say, technical roles, it's how we fare best. And I think when we do that kind of stuff, we generally do it paid. Of course, we don't like people to work just because they hear the name. We don't like to people to be paid. Oh yeah, I'm working for Adoratorio stuff, but on something that's maybe for us, say a reel for us, a series of stickers for us, or something like that. And if that turns out well, because you see so many aspects and facets of people when you're working on something that can be stressful. Stickers look fun and everything, but they can be stressful for the designer who's designing them, with good reason, when you're working with like 5 designers on the other end of the screen, right? So that's one of the best ways, I think, to see if you'd like to work with someone for years on end, right?
Exactly. Start small, build the relationship.
What's the I won't ask you for the numbers, right? But what's the turnover rate at Rogue?
So it's interesting because the model that I've set up is, I think, perfect for my lifestyle and the team's lifestyle. So technically, like, everyone is contract. So I'm the only employee of Rogue, but our main developer has been working with us even prior to Rogue existing, when I was just freelancing. It's just finding these powerhouse, either freelancers or whatever title that they have. Sometimes they're in a full-time job and then they just do it on the side, just for the petty cash, and the fun of working on it. But that's kind of like the model. So I have like a list of really, really amazing people, and then I just try to hold on to them as long as I can.
So many times when we and Italy, we receive a lot of inquiries, right? And I see these people sometimes, and I'm like, dude, like, be them man, girl, or however they define themselves. I look at it and say, you are too good. You are too good for like joining. I cannot pay you. I don't have that kind of wage for you, right? More so if they come from abroad, right? If they come from the States, we receive it sometimes from the States or from very rich countries, even in Europe, right? And I look at it and say, dude, how I'm paying your budget? I cannot find a way to do that. Maybe we can work on freelance or stuff like that. And so that's something that brought us to work abroad. First of all, in our first few years, like from the third or fourth year on, we started working a lot abroad, simply because Italy is a very weird market. When you reach the great brands or the great companies in general, you can have great budgets, but in general, communication is very, very low, right, on the budget side. And so we pretty much skipped as Adoratorio from low budget Italian or decent budget, actually, Italian companies to abroad, great budget, and then came back in Italy a lot in the last like 4 years with huge brands and stuff like that don't wholly have the Italian market, say, as a community, but rather worldwide. So
it's definitely challenging because you want to pay people what they're worth, but sometimes it's hard to keep the flow of things coming to be able to do that when you got other bills.
And that's more so in the States. I think that generally, even on the low end, the budgets, and that's related to life costs, right? So it's not weird, but if you're Italian, or I think the same for many of our say South American friends, okay, that happen to work with the States. For them, working with the States is like fantastic budget. They'll do not a year, of course. Well, depends on the state, but like half the year or 3 months worth on a single project, right? So yeah, it's a very weird market in a sense. But sometimes what I noticed is that when you train yourself, or simply when you leave a place, in our case, the studio or your studio, or many of the others that we talk with, because we have a shared vision of how work works, right? Is that you expect people to be paid what they're worth, okay? But more often than not, that doesn't happen. I know it's weird to think about, but I'm certain that many of the people with fantastic curriculums that write us don't actually gain what they should, or then they can't simply pull their weight for what they're worth, not because of personality issues or whatever, but simply because they are not in the right place. Our industry, I think, when I speak about our industry, I'd like to let's say circle the people we speak with, right? The people that are on your podcast and all of those that gravitate towards them. But our industry is so much bigger. There's like these monolithic, gigantic companies that I have, I don't know, 500 offices all over the world that are meat grinders pretty much. And that scares me a little bit, because too many great people and great creatives and stuff finish up in those kind of meat grinders, right?
You don't have certain levels of autonomy in those big companies. So you can't really say what you want. Like, I'm assuming the founders trust you pretty much explicitly with a lot of tasks, and there's mutual trust. And if you don't have that mutual trust, then it always feels like someone's looking over your shoulder and kind of controlling your every move. And that's not really a way to live or work.
Yeah, I think so. First of all, that's very true, and I think the most important part, rather than now, say where thanks to them allowing me, in a sense, I gathered this kind of freedom, in a sense, but also a lot of knowledge and authority, in a sense, backing it up. But only now I have this authority, this culture, this knowledge that allows me to make certain choices. They gave me a lot of freedom when I didn't have all those assets, right? All those soft skills. And I think that's the very difficult part. It's easy to give freedom to someone, okay, that in time you start trusting, even in a short time, but that you see that as the skill and not the potential.
Yeah.
If you see that someone with potential and you trust the person with potential, that's very forward looking compared to trusting someone who's clearly capable of doing what they do, right? So I think that's very hard. I don't know if I could do that myself, and it's something that I cherish a lot and that I thank Ene and Camilla a lot. I don't say that, but that's true, yeah.
On a similar through line, but maybe a little bit of a pivot, is what is the Kitchen Brigade, and how did hospitality school kind of get you ready for the job that you are currently in now? And how did that pivot happen in your life?
Okay, great question. Okay. So the kitchen, I was always fascinated by the Kitchen Brigade, in the sense that, yeah, I went to a hotel school, as you know, now. And what fascinated me about it is like the order. On one side, I'm a very orderly, very ordered person at home, in everything in my job, but also it stretched me too much, in the sense that I couldn't pull my weights, pull my ideas into what I did, right? But only, sorry, I'll start again. Scrap everything. Okay, delete this from minute, whatever it is. Yeah, no, the Kitchen Brigade, I think what fascinated me is like the order and how you are thought an order, and how you are thought in working with other people, right? And how you're taught that everyone has a role to achieve something greater. That's probably the best and biggest lesson that I got from it. At the same time, when I started pulling my weight in that, I understood that I couldn't have the kind of freedom that I wanted on one side. And on the other, I was simply too skinny, and I would pass out in the kitchen with great heat, and so that wasn't my path, let's say, to follow. I've always been incredibly fascinated by Michelin-starred restaurants and stuff like that, where the very height of that kind of kitchen, of that kind of cuisine, is produced. Thankfully, I have great friends from hotel school. Some are Michelin starred right now. I truly esteem them. I have great esteem for them. Sorry, but they also did a far stressful path. They followed a far stressful path than I did. And I think the fil rouge in it is that when I was so passionate about it, I was I had let's say, how do you say that in English? I had these makeup exams, right? Because I failed a few classes, let's say, in high school, and so I would study during the night. I would start at 4 a.m. Simply because I am and I was a night owl back then as well. And I would start at 4 a.m. and go all the way to 8. And at 8 a.m., I would take a break, and there would be this Anthony Bourdain No Reservation on TV, right? And so I fell in love with Anthony Bourdain. He listened to music that I liked a lot, which was punk music, Ramones, and stuff like that. And so I was incredibly captivated by this figure who mixed, let's say, the Brigade on one side, the high cuisine kitchen and everything in New York, and then traveling around and trying new things and being all over the place, and also being incredibly edgy for the time. I think he, maybe in the States, but here in Europe, no one recognizes how impactful Anthony Bourdain was towards shaping all these kitchen TV shows nowadays, right? And the judges of MasterChef and stuff like that, they couldn't hold a candle to what Bourdain did when no one was doing it, right? And so I bought Kitchen Confidentials, which is I think his first book.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was incredibly refreshing in a sense. You could see things that even in not so high kitchens like Michelin starred and everything, you could see here when I was working in hotels and everything. People sniffing cocaine during their shift in the kitchen, right? That happens, and that's like I've never known people as addicted as high-level chefs. Okay, that's very stressful. We were talking about earlier, I smoke a lot of cigarettes and I drink a lot of coffee. I stopped there generally. Well, they didn't at all. But it made me feel, and the weird thing is reading this made me fall in love with reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was more of a music person before. And then I think I was 14 or 15. I fell in love with reading, and I fell in love with good reading that gave me vibes, right? And I think that's the thing that slowly brought me towards this more communication kind of world. Then there was uni, and there were a lot of experiences, right? But that was pivotal, I think, for me loving what I do now and taking this kind of route.
Anthony Bourdain like pretty much shaped the face of food TV in a way and gave it new life, because I think when you think food TV prior to, let's say, 2010, I think of Anthony Bourdain, and I think of then also like PBS, and I think about like oh gosh, Julia Child. That's the name. Yeah. And like that's very, very different. That's like housewife kind of vibes. And then Anthony Bourdain's like punk rock, like travel, like get into the shit. Like he literally wanted to go on adventures, and he took you on them. And what a better way to see the world than through food and the experiences of an individual culture of a place. So
and the joy of discovery. I mean, I will always forget the first time I went to Sardinia, right? I remember right away when I landed. Thankfully, I had friends there. I remember this time where Anthony went there in one of his episodes and found a farm where they had these very typical goat cheese, okay, that they have over there, which has worms in it, right? It's super weird. And it was like, I landed, I had a friend who was like from Cagliari, which is like the main city. And he had his father was like an historian for Sardinia and everything. I presented myself to him and I said, okay, I need to eat Casumarzu. It's the name of this cheese. 1 week he comes back and he said, yeah, I had this farmer friend take it, like this much.
Whoa.
Worm infested cheese. Okay, I didn't eat it all. I tried it out, like 3 scoops, right? But yeah, I will never forget that. And I love the vibe that Anthony Bourdain gave. I was lucky enough to meet him in Sirmione. I grew up on Lake Garda, very close to Sirmione. He used to go there this was when I was 17, when I was working in hotels, and he was friends with the owner of my hotel. And my boss at the time, and so he knew I was a great fan, and he introduced me to him. So yeah, sweet memories.
One thing I forgot to ask, curious what Amsterdam offers in terms of a new perspective, a new clientele. What does Adoratorio get out of having a studio there in terms of relationships, work, new opportunities?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the dreamy part, which is the most beautiful, and why we decided on it is simply because first of all, Amsterdam is a great city, very beautiful, very picturesque in a sense. It's a great hub for creatives. I think right now it's probably the best hub for design in Europe. Okay, given the situation in London and given. No, I can say that. Okay, I'll stop on that last thought. But yeah, I think it's probably the greatest hub in Europe. So many creatives, so many people willing to move to Amsterdam. Amsterdam costs quite a bit, but not as much as other cities, say Paris, maybe. And also, Dutch people are very well educated in English. So it's very easy to work with an English workflow and not a Dutch workflow. And the not so dreamy part is that the taxes are fantastic. there. So I think it's like it's the connection of the two things, right? It's it's a beautiful city full of young people and of creativity everywhere. I probably like at least 50% of the greatest web designers and minds that I know in this field are in Amsterdam right now. They're not necessarily from Amsterdam; they are in Amsterdam though. And so, yeah, I think that was a given choice. We probably during our process we thought of Amsterdam, Copenhagen, which I think has a lot of potential, beautiful city as well. I love it so much, and also a few fantastic studios there. Hello Monday, first of all. Are they in Copenhagen still? Yeah, Copenhagen and Harus, I think, and also Paris. But even if I'm half French, I don't feel confident enough in working in a French only speaking environment. So yeah, Amsterdam.
Yeah, that might be a little bit challenging.
Yeah, I'm challenged enough with the clients and everything, and with the projects themselves. I'm thinking of everything from strategy to art direction and stuff. I don't need the French on top of it. Yeah.
well, you said like that as an Italian, you can kind of like speak through like telekinesis a little bit with other Italians. I feel like the French are the same way. Maybe like depending on where you are in America, like you have like cultural norms, and like if you're in New York, like like other New Yorkers will respond to things in a certain way. You have a same dialect and vocabulary, but also like there's rules of the landscape that you just understand, but you have to live there for a long enough period to know them. And I think that
how is it in Boston?
Boston, well, so Boston, it's like all medical and all like science. So like people come to Boston for education, and they either stay in Boston for some sort of like medical reason or scientific research reason. But the city has a lot of people coming in and then also leaving. So what Boston needs is like a cultural incentive or fusion to like get young people to stay, and it's starting. So like when I used to live there, I didn't like living there, but now that I live, in like the beach town area, like an hour away, and it's like almost 10 years later, it's gotten slowly, but there's more young locally owned restaurants opposed to big restaurant groups with lots of capital. But it's just the rents were so high that it's hard to do that kind of stuff.
Have you ever been in Europe? Yeah.
Yes, I have.
I grew up with the saying that Boston is the most European city in the States. Given of course, the very correct me if I'm wrong, the very strong Irish culture there, and in general, from a few friends that stopped by pretty much on vacation or lived there for a little while, right? They all told me, yeah, it's very European, and I think that's something that us Europeans in moving to the States, right, miss a lot. The kind of the city vibes, even in Milan, which is probably the most cosmopolitan Italian city. I always say, I lived in Milan, I lived in London, I've been to Barcelona so many times and all over the world. And so I always say that Milan is a very little city on one hand, but it's also so very Italian, which is like you're like swearing if you say something like this to another Italian, right? Because Milan is the most to a very core Italian that maybe lives in the middle of Italy, even in Rome, and you say Milan is super Italian. That's very weird to them because it's like the most New York-y kind of thing that we have. But at the same time, you cross the street and you have a bar, you have a pizzeria, you have people walking around, you have parks and everything. And I think that's something that as Europeans and Italians, French, Spanish specifically can't live without. Not live without, say, going to work by foot. Even if I have to take the tube or metro or underground or however you call it over there, that's fine. But I have to meet people. I have to be able to walk from point A to point B, which is something that, in my experience, aside from big cities, is very missing in the States.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That is the biggest thing that's missing. It's like you have to, if you're out of the city, you have to have a car.
Yeah.
And
wasn't it like a fad over there, the Italian passeggiata this last summer. Like I saw so many reels coming from American influencers, like say, oh yeah, I've been to Portofino, and the incredible thing they do is that after they have dinner, they have this thing called passeggiata, which for us it's literally I walk somewhere else, right? It's not something special, and they gave this mystique to it that truly had me and all Italians giggle a lot.
It's that we don't have the depth of like meal culture. So like aperitivo, we don't really have that. That would be like happy hour, but
Yeah.
in for the States. But happy hour is like you get like a discount on your drink and maybe you eat a snack. But like that's not it's not quite the same. And then like the complexity of like meals where like certain things come before other items. It isn't quite the same like in the States. But I think honestly, like the methodology of like the courses and like when you eat and like having meals around certain times, it makes it very communal. It's like I'm assuming you structure it with other people for certain
Correct.
meals, aperitivo, and etc. And like that's the point. Like, I mean, it's pretty shitty to eat alone. So
it takes great courage, and I envy people who are able to eat alone. But I wouldn't do that too often. Let's just say that it's a great proof of mental strength, I think. But eating alone is, it's not as good. It's not bad. It's not as good as eating with others.
Exactly.
More often than not. More often.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's a thing. We're social creatures. We need other people, and I think having the structure of Europe to be able to take a cheap airplane to another country or use the train to get around your own country is so essential. And we don't have that same like internal structure in the United States. And I think it divides us in a lot of ways, but that is a much bigger conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're going into a black hole right now, which we could continue for an hour. But yeah, you said one very true thing. Is that aperitivo is the greatest export that Italy in specifically, but also France has for the rest of the world. There's nothing as great as the aperitivo time, I think, even if you don't drink.
You had mentioned that recently you've been getting into more generative and interactive installations and branding. I couldn't help but like be like inspired by the Roblox Brescia project that you guys put up on Instagram. So how does that fall into, I guess, like the priorities of the studio, what you're looking to get more into, I guess, like in 2024? And then this is all leading into another question. So 2 parts.
Yep.
Like what is Adoratorio's kind of like unique position in like the market of agencies and like the digital landscape?
On the Roblox part and say the generative part. So I think they're very different, and that Roblox on one side, how did it fit into the progress, let's call it, of the studio? We literally had to smash it in, right? That was something completely lateral, but even more lateral than say a website that we do for a cause that we believe in or something, because it was not our core on one side, and on the other it was purely testing. And when we were into it, we started it and we said we already worked with Sandbox, which is another kind of metaverse, and we did a very cool thing, very little experience called to the summit, where you climb this mountain, very beautiful assets and stuff. And we started this project on Roblox because I think we had worked on something with Gucci or stuff like that. And we started when we built a few things from Brescia, and we said, let's recreate Brescia. Brescia is damn big. Okay. And so at one point we were like, we have to wrap this up. We have to bring it together, right? And so I think it's called Adoratorio's Playground, right? Which is the project for Brescia in the Roblox, started during COVID. Right. We didn't publicize it. We didn't post it on Instagram until I think 3 months ago, probably. We talked about it a few times during conferences that we had where me and Cami spoke. But yeah, it was such a long project. And also, we didn't work on Roblox that much, I must say. Aside from this project itself, we worked quite a lot in Sandbox. We worked with a fantastic, the first Gucci experience on Sandbox with the collaboration with Palace. So that was fantastic. And now we moved, say, to other... I use the keyword metaverses because I think everyone who listens to this will understand what I mean. I don't believe that the metaverse exists right now. I believe it will, but that's another topic. But it simply means very stylized kind of universes.
Yeah.
And I think it was like, on one hand, it was like shooting, like throwing something away, throwing something in a barrel, right? And losing it completely. But at the same time, we found in that barrel, we found something very useful. So Roblox, we don't work with it that much. I won't lie, I don't like Roblox that much. It works very well. The numbers are all there. I don't like Roblox. Okay. Our experience is very cool though. Sandbox is very fun, but we started working with more, realistic kind of metaverses, say spatial, or even working directly in Unity and placing the experience that we create into VR visors. And I think so that this, what someone could say, this was a clear miss, okay? Because I don't foresee additional projects on Roblox very soon, because it's also very different from our style. We're quite polished, we're quite very, very Italian in a sense, very tasty. And Roblox is the complete opposite, right? It's very young, it's very childish in a way. But I think that having that miss and having that experience that at least we enjoyed, even with some stress, brought us to actually do that kind of experiences on another platform that works very well for us. So that's one of the things. What differentiates us, I think I said it all in this explanation, what differentiates us from the rest. I think we have a very, we were talking about copywriting earlier, right? And I said it's very difficult to come up with taglines and stuff. Back in the day, so 2 years or something ago, I came up with this tagline, which is our current tagline, which is, we are announcers who think where thoughts are yet to go. So we are the backstage, right? We work with clients and we don't impose a style on them. I think this is very important to separate being an agency or a studio from being a creative collective or just an artist in a way. So we don't like to impose our style. We like to impose taste. So that means having things that are up to a certain standards, that are done very well and that look very well, but not necessarily in a specific style. And I think that's what differentiates us. Also, the ability to work on in certain kind of environments, in strategy, branding, and then pulling off what's digital, in having the mindset to see how from one start in time you can reach a variety of different, let's say, outlets. I don't know if it happened to you to have a client that you manage, for some reason they like you very much. I don't know, that's weird. I don't understand these clients myself, how they like us so much, but that give you the possibility to work on a vision, right? The possibility to start on something that's very useful in a sense. That ties to branding as well, as you asked a little bit ago. Starting from branding, doing the boring, let's call it, stuff of like corporate website, which can actually be very cool and very beautiful and very fun. And that's something we're doing a lot of. And then from there, after you have this very established structure, pull off the cool shit that you want to pull off. And you work for the clients as well, because you created the platform where people that engage with the brand, okay, actually have the basics to then experience and enjoy, being capable of enjoying the experiences that you create. I think that's the biggest breakthrough that you can achieve going forward, instead of just fixating on just doing. We were known for being the ones that do cool websites. Okay, that's all we were. And in time, we know that we evolved that way. And I think that the public, let's say, who follows us, in generally who engages with us, still needs to see a lot of what we've done in the last 2 years in terms of branding, in terms of generational art. We managed, thankfully, creating this kind of environment to work on generative art in-house. just as art and not necessarily as a business project, and that's something incredibly freeing and incredibly beautiful. But yeah, I think this kind of structuring is what defines us, the ability to envision how digital can be, and the variety, say, from the Roblox spatial sandbox to the corporate website to the configurator of sorts for a brand like Maserati to AR filters and stuff like that. And I think that's only achievable if you start to grow a little bit and have a common goal, I think.
I guess, like, what is the variety of types of projects that you're working on within the studio? Because, like, when I think about Adoratorio, I think about the beautiful, incredible, like, sleek, polished websites. I do think more so recently, I think about the fusion of, like, incredibly, like, unique 3D mixed with, like, the digital experience and the perfectly flowing animations and how it all ties together, like some of the winery websites that you've done, but also some of the Gucci stuff that you've done. But you had mentioned AR, you've mentioned VR now. There is a question in here. So what is like kind of like the breakdown of projects and project types that you're working on, but also how much is personal exploration and iteration encouraged within the studio to give yourselves these free projects to explore and dive into new technology?
That's exactly it. I want to first address one point. And first of all, this is the best kind of user testing I've ever done. So thank you for telling me that. That's exactly what. So we're very. I'm very happy to hear that you started recognizing us not only for the sleek websites, which was, let's say, our first core, our first positioning, but also for 3D. Right. At the same time, we grew up as a studio, and that means me and probably 6 others. Our lead developer is in there. Another one of our senior developers is in there, and designers as well as our co-founders, with giants in mind. When we think about 3D into a website environment, we think of Active Theory. First of all, that's like one gods to us. We think of Dog Studio, but more recently them. We think of Hello Monday. We think of all those people, right?
Yeah.
And so we never wanted to. We want to do the 3D thing in the web, but we knew already that we couldn't be just focused on that, because they're gods. They literally they have Illusion now, Unseen Studio. That they do mind-blowing things. Okay, and they do mind-blowing things because they go straight and they shoot their arrow so straight that they want to do that kind of things. And we have always been a little bit around the place. Like we like to do different things. And so thanks. That's a great compliment you gave me and you gave the studio. But I think that it's in also having those other outlets that, again, if we do this interview, this podcast in a few years, hopefully you will recognize us for all those things as well.
Yeah.
That's when we literally hit the jackpot. I think we're working towards having this kind of diversity. What's the ratio? I'd say that we generally hit the nail with one test out of 3 or 4 in terms of projects, in terms of fields that we are trying to, let's say, conquer in a sense. But it brings us back to the topic that we were discussing before about hirings, right? I think the generative art part, the interaction design part really popped up when we hired this person. Aurelio is a great teammate of mine and colleague who was literally focused on this. Only generative kind of art and only interaction design. We didn't do that up until the point we were in the position, thankfully, to have him spend a year with us, hired, just doing R&D, okay? And that in time brought results. We worked with, Off-White. We had this little AR, which paid, thankfully, part of that year and stuff. But generally, it was just testing. And after 2 years, 1 year and a half, it started paying off. Also because not only in terms of budget, right, but because it helped us shape the idea we had for a certain brand into an outlet that we wanted to achieve. We always describe our website. If anyone has heard one of our talks in a conference, we always describe our website as the willingness to bring the same experience that you have when you walk into a retail store of sorts, into a boutique, onto the web, right? And then we thought, well, why don't we actually go into the boutiques as well? And so that's why we brought in the interaction part and stuff. And it's working out quite well. Still, we have a few things on Instagram. We use Instagram for very visual stuff. We don't have so many websites there anymore. But I think it's shaping out greatly. And I think it really ties everything up and makes the projects far more interesting for everybody, even for the developers that don't work on it, because they're part of something a bit bigger. Yeah.
What would you say that people should be focused on or exploring in terms of new technologies or things in for like this year and maybe the future in general?
There's only one answer. There's only one answer, and you know that, and it's AI. There's no way. There's no way people, any people saying what does the future look like? It looks like AI. I think understanding now. I had. Have you ever heard Peter Smart talk?
Yeah.
Okay. Peter Smart, which I've had the pleasure to meet in 2017 for the first time, always gave fantastic talk. He's a very communicative kind of person, very enthusiastic kind of person. The only American person I know whose hand gestures compared to an Italian. Okay. And
that's amazing.
Here at the worst, he closed up the conference in Amsterdam, and he gave this new talk. I heard his previous talk like 4 times. It was always fun, but at the 4th time I was quite bored. Not by him, because he's a great man on stage, but he gave this talk on AI. And what I kept mumbling, and not mumbling, but thinking about while he was talking, is how right now is the moment to understand how AI works. Okay, not only and not particularly what it can produce, okay, in terms of imagery, in terms of everything, but how it works. Because if you learn right now when it's still, and don't let anyone tell you that, okay, yeah, it's too late. That's not true. Not enough people know about it still, or know about it in a technical sense, right? Understanding how these things work, testing out these quite old now, more so in terms of how AI evolves. But GPTs, when they came out, what I did the first day, so custom chat GPT, right, for specific purposes, what I did the first day was bring it out and understand how I could shape a GPT to do what I wanted for that specific task, right? I smashed my head for like 10 hours straight for sure. I was like here at 2 a.m, not having an Excel file that worked or that GPT could read correctly. Yeah, that bothered me quite a bit. But I think that's the most important part. So I think understanding about AI is the first thing. I'm also a huge sucker for what is called Web3, which in that case, I think it's bad branding. Okay, I'm not a crypto bro of sorts. I just envision a world that's a lot more digital than it already is. We grew up in a time where we saw the passing from completely analogic to digital, right? And being a nerd, like I've always been, right? And I think we're quite close on that.
Yeah.
I grew up understanding what something digital could be worth, in a sense. When I was in university, I'll just give you a piece of a tidbit here. When I was in university, I paid my daily life, let's say, for like 6 months by playing World of Warcraft, because I was good and I was selling, boosts, let's call it. I was bringing someone who wasn't very good at it, or it was just decent, to do the very hard thing, right, and bring him back so he could get his, very beautiful ornament or whatever, right? And in that moment, I think I understood that something digital can have value if scarcity is involved, and that's why I got into NFTs more for the culture of it than for the grinding and whatever roles right now. And after a little bit, that made me fall in love with generative art, right? and true generative art, not apes with different beards or stuff like that, but true generative art, right? In how the likes of Tyler Hobbs or those kind of artists, which I am confident in calling artists, right? Create something that's bigger than themselves, create something, an algorithm, right, that gives life to art that's more than they could imagine, right? But that they created because they gave shape to this engine, let's say. So that really captivated me. So those are the two things. Probably if you want to make money, AI is the best bet. But I'm also a dreamer, so I like digital possessions as well.
Here's the thing: is like you can't put Pandora back in the box. Like this is here; it's here to stay. It's going to continue to grow, adapt, join the tools that we're already using.
What are you using AI for right now?
I feel like I end up using it mainly in just like software tools that it's already in. So like, I mean, I think it's really cool. We're not recording on on Zoom right now, but that Zoom has like the meeting summaries.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, like prior to signing up for Loom, I keep saying Loom. Loom has AI tools as well. I use Loom for video recording, so I don't have as many meetings with clients. So I'll just walk through edits of a presentation, summarize where we are in a project. And with the Loom AI, it'll literally give me the transcript. It'll summarize it into chapters. And I'm just like, why doesn't it like do that for everything? That's so nice.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I think one of my in the early days, more specifically, one of my greatest assets was having a very great short-term memory. So I would get out of calls and write down the main points, right? And I said, okay, I got it. And people would forget, but I wouldn't, right? And in this case, this fixes that thing. In an incredible way, just by doing what you're doing already. And I think those are very basic, in a sense, implementations, right, of something greater. I use it now to brainstorm. Say I use ChatGPT a lot to brainstorm on names, synonyms, how to shape a certain kind of phrase. Even just I was born slightly before the internet, but I grew up with internet. So I have one certainty, is that the best way to get an answer out of the internet, which means out of any forum or whatever they are now, right, is to ask the wrong question, right, or to say the wrong sentence. In that way, people will correct you, right? And so I use it also to many times the ChatGPT specifically, but even others don't give me great answers. But at least I know the boundaries I'm working with, right? And I know, okay, yeah, this was a stupid. Why are you telling me this stupid thing? I won't write this stupid thing because I understood it's stupid because I read it out loud, so that for sure. And on another point, sometimes on specific projects, we use it for to avoid sketching out the proposals and stuff like that. I think for that it's very great. But then again, there are incredible uses that even I, working not a lot with it, but studying it quite a bit, have yet to discover or have yet to use to a decent extent. So, yeah, that's I think the only constant in our work is that we have to stay up to date, right?
I think that's it. It's like just knowing what you got, what you can do, and that just makes me more valuable or knowledgeable.
As long as you're enthusiastic about new things like these groundbreaking things that can be scary, I think you're in a good place, that you're still growing. It's when you start being scared and pissed off about these new things that probably it's time to find a corporate job, like you were saying before, that pays a lot, so you don't have to hustle that much.
Yeah, I mean, more power to those people. Like, if you could even have like a corporate job, pays all the bills, and then just like side hustle and do whatever you want, like whatever makes you happy. I've seen plenty of incredible designers that used to be like real big names just join companies and like they're just living their lives, and more power to them.
Yeah, that tells a lot about how I approach life. But yeah,
I know. I'm like, I'm gonna hustle and grind until I die.
Until I'm tired. There's no one I envy more than people who are satisfied with what they're doing with their life, with everything. So
Oh yeah, exactly. We have to find like the fulfillment in certain aspects. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a couple of places that we could go. We could dive into some fun topics, or we could dive into how most digital agencies probably should charge more.
Yeah, let's go into the more meaty stuff. Then we can close up when we reach that point into the more fun stuff, I think.
Great, love it. So I guess the question would be is for the studios out there that are either starting now or that are a couple of years into their journey. I think the issue is that they're trying to build the self-confidence to pitch for the amount that they're actually worth, but are undervaluing what they can bring to the table, even if they're incredible. So I guess what is like the methodology? What are the strategies to pricing yourself appropriately, and where should like we be thinking about numbers in today's day and age? Obviously that's different. It's applicable for different studios. A 200-person agency is going to charge in the millions. A 15-person studio is going to charge hundreds of thousands, hopefully, maybe more, maybe
hopefully. Depends. So that's a great question, and I think that's probably one of the most difficult things to do when you're starting your own shop, let's call it, right?
Yeah.
It's that on one hand, it's easy to, let's say, pitch for a very high budget on a project you don't like. Okay? And that happened to us in the early days. We said, okay, we truly don't want to do this project. If we have to, let's try and ask an outrageous amount. Right, but outrageous at the time was like less than the minimum that we think about now. But at the time it was completely outrageous. So I think on one hand, it's a lot of experience, and I please also understand, and this covers everything that I will say from now on. We don't have the answer yet. I mean, we found a way. We're doing well, but still, it was just 3 weeks ago that I was amazed that a certain budget got accepted, right? Because I was thinking of like 40% less, but and that was just on top of my head. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't anything. First of all, I think the best piece of advice I can give is don't think how much it's a certain project it's worth for you. Think how much it's worth for your client. Okay, which is a great position to start in.
Yeah.
Have a minimum, okay, that you know is the basic to do a certain kind of project. When I joined up in Adoratorio, after 2 weeks, I had this website signed, a very simple website, one of my favorites to date. Okay, we were still testing a lot of parallax effects and everything, and I had this contract signed by email. Okay, without ever seeing the person on the other hand for like, I think it was like 40% more than the price, the medium price for a website at the time, which was also the best price. So that was great, and it was simply because I was too naive to ask for less. Right? I simply say, okay, yeah, we're here. We just literally exchanged emails. We didn't even speak face to face. If we were to speak face to face, I would probably ask the normal rate at the time. I asked for more, and they said easily yes by email, contract signed, right? And that taught me that anyone pitching for a project, be it branding, website, or anything, almost always devalues himself.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's almost always, again, I think back of projects of gigantic projects that we built, corporate websites that are still working today. Okay, and that in some cases e-commerce is okay, that their revenue is in the millions, okay, but millions and millions and millions. If I think of how low we sold that kind of project, it makes me shiver, right? I say, okay, yeah, today I would charge, I won't even say twice, I would charge 5 times the price, right? At the same time, there's the authority that you need to build to have the credibility to ask certain prices.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in one way, you see the best fit and you say, yeah, okay, if I'm asking this, I'm going a little bit under what it's needed to do it. But if that's all they could afford, I would do it anyway for that price, right? Because I want to do that project. And I think that what builds in the first year an agency. And that's agencies, but all companies rarely go positive in the first 3 years. So the first part in running, I think, a successful agency is not giving up before that point and building towards that point when you actually statistically can make it, right? Yeah. I'll also give another thought that we have. This is very sensitive information on one side, but I think it's not. It doesn't need to be protected, right? In a sense, it doesn't need to be kept or guard kept or something like that. I think one of the ways that brought us where we are today, okay, is the few times. Okay, it happened 2 times, 2 different times, and I remember exactly when they happened. That we simply said, okay, our work is worth more than we're asking for. And from the day after, we asked more, right? Nothing more. The quality of the project had reached that point, because generally you have this curve, okay, where you keep growing in terms of quality and in terms of technological advancement and whatever, but your prices stay here, right?
Yeah.
They're here and they keep going, and there's a point where you need to bring them to the standard, right? And it's in those points that you actually grow exponentially. I always see this 3-year cycle in Adoratorio, and that's something very reflective, where every 3 years we have a breakthrough. It's like these 3 years, on one side we have better budgets, on the other side all the testing that we discussed before comes to actual fruition for actual jobs, and therefore we open up a year of successes, of beautiful projects, of wide projects that actually pay off, right, and that add to something that wasn't giving budget before. So I think, yeah, on one side, ask for more. That's the basic. Ask for more and have the face to ask for more. People will tell you no sometimes when you ask for outrageous amount. We had very bitter conversations in the early days with people for what we consider now stupid budgets for their project, okay? And at the time, we considered a correct budget, and they were like, oh, are you trying to steal from us and stuff like that, right? We're not talking millions, we're not talking hundreds of thousands, we're not talking even half of 100,000 in this case. So something like that. But having the face to actually ask for it when it gives you, when you actually find someone who accepts, and when you find someone who says no, you start building this understanding of how these things work. But again, it's very much tied to gut feeling. If you're a studio, and when we say studio, we say a little reality. Say, in my mind, we are on the boundary of going over what a studio is, like 15 people, the most, or maybe 20. If you have the mentality and you are very young in a sense or something like that, you can still be called a studio, but you're leaning towards an agency. If you have more than 10 people, it's a lot of gut feeling in a sense, and it's a lot of keeping people happy inside the team. So these are very far-fetched, I think, and actually pulled together sentences, but they're very true at the same time. There's no way to tell you ask for 50,000 for this project, or there's no way to tell you ask 10 because it's worth it, right? It's just a gut feeling. But in general, if you're doing something that's worth, think about how much a project is worth to the client. I think that's the bottom line. What's your strategy on that?
No, I think you hit like all the pieces, and I'll do like a little bit of a summary in trying to distill that all down. But I think the trajectory of any studio or even a freelancer just trying to do their own thing is that the first couple of years is you're building. You're probably saying yes to everything. You're trying to get your footing, building your reputation as well as your credibility. So like once you get to some level of credibility, you can start, that's like that gap that you talked about. You can jump up your prices. But the thing is, you have to have faith in yourself, your team, and be confident to ask for that next level of pricing. So if you were charging 10,000, maybe you should just close your eyes, have faith, and just be like, I'm going to triple it and see what happens. I'm going to ask for it. I know that I can back it up based on the value that I provide to that client.
Yeah.
And if there is some point of contention, that's okay. Just be like able to talk about your work. Don't compromise the budget for the sake of compromising the budget because they ask, but figure out factors within the scope of the work and see what you can cut and align together with the client to cut those things and have it in your contract so you're covered. I think that's a big necessary step.
Yeah,
Just
you
like
said
not
something
compromising.
fundamental. Something fundamental. I think I don't know what's the culture in the States, right? But I think it's the similar all over the world. People like to bargain on one and on the other, right? And I think you said it greatly. Don't compromise. I had this. We had signed this huge project last year that we're still working on. We released the first phase. It's literally the embodiment of the technique, let's say, of the approach that I told you earlier: branding, corporate, and then experiences and everything around it, right? And I have a great relationship with the team and with the marketing department, creative department, and everything. We said, okay, yeah, this is the budget. Let's say it's in the hundreds. Beautiful project, a lot of potential. They say, okay, yeah, this is perfect. Then the accounting person calls me, right? I was in Montreal visiting Loke again, and they call me and they say, oh yeah, this is a good budget. I know they told you yes, but could we cut it? And they were like, could we cut it 40%? And I'm like,
why?
How? Did I ask you for 40% less? No, I can. If we want a beautiful project, everything, very great relationship with the team, incredible people. If you truly want, I can cut, I don't know, 5% just because I don't want to talk on the phone right now, right? But and that's a very Italian approach to things. But I said there's no way I'm cutting more than 5%, and also I'm going to explain why I'm cutting 5% because I'm not doing a certain little task. In this case, we're talking 5%. It's a variable, right? But there's this thing that if I said yes, all the projects that are coming now would still be under that scope, right?
Yep.
And I simply said no. This is the budget that we gave you. In my head, it was like, this is a beautiful project. We must do it. It's going to have us work for a year, 2 years now. But at the same time, you cannot compromise on that kind of thing, because if you compromise with them, it's not so much as doing that project with them for less budget, is that you're compromising every time with yourself, right?
Yeah. When you have that gut reaction to say yes to that dropping by 40%, you're devaluing the number that you gave and kind of proving to yourself that you're not worth it.
Yeah.
Opposed to just like having the tough conversation, which is what probably needed to happen in that case, being like, we can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. Maybe they were just trying to bargain and get a deal. Maybe they didn't think that you would say yes, but
99% of the time it's that one.
Yeah.
That they're trying to get the deal because, I don't know, maybe the accounting person said, oh, I cut off 40% from these, maybe give that 5% to me at the end of the year, right? So more so when you're talking with big agencies, when you're talking big companies, sorry. When you're talking with smaller companies, maybe it's different. But
I think that's true. I think like everyone wants a deal. No one wants to pay the most that they can. Maybe for certain things, it's like, oh, I'm getting the most luxury thing. It'll never go on sale. I'm okay with paying that. But I guess it's like positioning yourself as like, this is extremely high quality. We're going to be there every step of the way. We're going to take care of you. We've done this for dozens of people. We like are here for you. It's a service industry. Like, and knowing that it's like a true partnership. It's just like, we wouldn't ask you to just like cut 40% of doing
product, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the other thing, and I don't know if that's just me / Adoratorio, or I think it's very industry wide. More often than not, what you quote like in 70% of the cases, is less than what you're actually going to do.
Mhm.
We're very true in our relationship with our partners. That's why we're very selective. Uh, we are capable of being selective. That's a huge privilege in who we work with. But at the same time, when we work with someone, it's not that we're going to quote the single, I wouldn't say addition, but like fix the counseling that they ask on a different topic for like 4 hours during the week or stuff. We won't do that kind of nitpicking into these kind of things, right?
Hmm.
And that's why you shouldn't compromise on the initial budget, because you're going to work more anyway, right?
Yeah.
So just get the right budget for what you were supposed to do. Then you're working more anyway. Okay.
Yep.
I think that truly successful agencies, or at least truly successful owners of agencies, make their money on actually quoting these things that I'm telling you now. The 4-hour counseling that you or me do, say, and we're working into, I don't know, I don't want to throw names, beer company, whatever,
Yeah.
which is a big agency, turns out. And they ask all of us to quote all of these little things. That's what makes their 10 Lamborghini at the end of the year. But it doesn't truly work, I think, in a studio setting. The relationships that we build, the word of mouth that we build,
Mm.
we never spent more than 200 euros per month on, say, ads. Early, we didn't even spend that. We just did cool shit that we shared. We were normal, kind people with clients and stuff, and the word got around, and we started
Yeah.
working real well with great people. I wanted to add this thing to the previous question about budgets. It's
Yeah.
not only budgets. And how did I forget? This is fundamental, I think. Is it was so much that I almost forgot about it. Is that if you if it's lower your budget, it's because you're seeing a path, a route into the project that you're doing. Let's say that for us it was initially it was I Buongiorno,
Mm.
right? It's this winery, little winery, family winery in Apulia. Okay, fantastic place, fantastic wine. We work with them on a little branding on the labels of the wines and then on their website, right? We went a little bit at the time, quite a little bit below our budget, because we saw the potential in the project. They gave us complete creative freedom. We created this beautiful website. I think it was the first or second site of the day we got on awards and stuff like that. And that brought other people who were like-minded, who were open to give us freedom, right? And it was the same with a few other clients. This also had a cherry on top, that thanks to I Buongiorno, 5 years afterwards, Netflix reached out from San Francisco because this person saw the website and said, okay, who did this? Who did these labels? And reached out to us directly. So that was literally like the 1 in a million chance, right? But it's in working with the kind of people and projects that you want to work with that you bring more people like that. And the same happens if you work with people with industries or people or companies that you wouldn't like working with. The same happens. If you work with them, more people like that will come.
Yeah, it's true. And I want to point out one super important thing that you had said, where you're lowering the price in order to get into an industry, but you're also not compromising, because you're kind of negotiating, like, and I'm assuming telling them, hey, this is below what we normally do this for. We're super excited about the project. We want to work with you specifically because we believe in you, what you're doing, and your mission. Is there a way that we can make this project equitable for the two of us?
Yeah.
And that could be negotiating creative freedom. Maybe they only get one round of revisions, whatever it is. You're still like
Exactly
figuring it out together as like partners.
Because I think compromising also comes in that way, and you said it correctly. It comes into not only the budget but the creative freedom that you receive.
Yeah.
And you said it perfectly. It's hard sometimes. It's truly, I think, that to be a successful entrepreneur in a sense, because that you are if you start an agency or a studio or whatever. It takes a very different skill set than being a great professional, right? It's like two skill sets compared. I saw the evolution. Okay, I'm in a very managerial position, whatever you want, but I didn't start the company. I got in when things were almost okay, and thankfully I helped and only helped in shipping it to a very bright future, hopefully, but a very bright present. But I didn't endure, say, the first year. The first year, it's like a nightmare to me because you're no one. You have no visibility anywhere. Okay, you're just throwing money at it in a sense. More so if you don't have money, like Camila and Denea did. They didn't have money. They just got whatever they had and put it in, right? And I think that's the scariest part. And I think, and I reflected back on myself. I hope someone can take something from this. I doubt, because it's a very personal and specific case. But in our sense, earlier we were speaking about trusting in the potential and having the guts to trust someone's potential, right?
Yeah.
And I feel that we that in them giving trust, having their trust in me, I was naive enough, because I didn't have at the beginning my money on the line, right, to say no to certain things and say yes to other and ask certain prices, that knowing myself, I wouldn't have asked if the company was mine, if my money paid everyone who worked in Adoratorio at the time, So that's very hard. I saw the moves I did right, and that they did right, but sometimes I had to bump heads with Cami or with Enea, because I thought one move was clearly right in my freedom, in my clarity of mind, because I didn't have all that baggage of me waving me down, right? So I think that's a very, again, a unique, let's say, situation. But I think if you don't have someone like me at the time or whoever, it's just it could be translated into taking a step back, or at least trying from the situation you're in, and actually with a clear mind trying to evaluate the choices, the choice you have in front of you, not the choices you get lost in the chaos otherwise, but the choice you have in front of you.
And is there a particular way that you're doing like proposals or pitching for, well, maybe not pitching for work for free, but like the way that we do it is we always do a high, middle, and low price option. And that's all based on like the deliverables attached to the goals. And I'm assuming there's certain things that you factor into each price. I would just say like the things that I think about are, how long is this going to take? How many team members is it going to take? Like I always include some sort of profit on top of like whatever the price is. So I'm considering how long like it's going to take, the software and the technology. Do we need to hire other people? Accommodating that into the factor. So I guess this is like a two-part question. How are you guys doing a multi-tiered proposal, and what factors are you keeping in mind whenever you're pricing creative work?
So first of all, this is the most enriching exchange I've had recently. All the questions that you're asking me are literally having ideas pop up in my mind, because are all things that I went through, and maybe I went through these questions, these exact questions myself, with the others in the studio, or just myself earlier, like 4 years ago and stuff like that. And I think about where we are now compared to the answers I gave to those questions, right? So first of all, about the tiering, okay, of the proposals, that was one thing we bumped our heads on a lot. Tried not to tier. We then tried to have, I remember this still, I hated that naming so much. We had the great whatever we called it proposal, and we had the super cool whatever fireworks proposal. Oh, I hate it so much. I think I cringe so hard thinking back to it now. I think it was like 2017 at the time, maybe 18. Okay, I never found, but that's strictly related to how we work and how we like to engage with our projects, knowing the people we are, that the tiring option was failing. what we wanted to do was like we had one idea in mind. Okay, we came and we saw the project and we said, yeah, this is how we would do it, right? And we either needed to shape it down, okay, to have the basic option, or we needed to somehow, okay, pop it even more, like adding stuff and adding flashy stuff. So I never found the tiring option. We tried it on a few projects. I never found it successful, but that's not because this approach is a failure in itself. I think it can work for some, but I found myself literally rooting for one each and every time because I knew which one.
Yeah.
I think so. I speak as well as Cami. We are the two people that are speaking a lot with the clients. Right. And we are the ones that are selling in a way that's, again, part of our job. We do a lot of things, but this is the one, right? And I think that part of our success is because I'm convinced that what we are proposing is not only making money for us and making us do a great project, but is making money for the client. I think that's the only way I could sell something. I grew up, and well, we will speak maybe about this later, but that's the only point. And therefore, if I'm convinced in a tiring option with 3 options of sorts that one is correct, I swear to God, I'm selling that, or I'm telling you we shouldn't do this project. And it happened. It happened. So that's the point. I like to be very, very clear. This is our idea, how we would do it. Okay, and this is the budget that we would provide. You have 10% less budget. Okay, we will do it anyway this way. You have 15% less budget. If the project is interesting enough, we will probably do it anyway, right? We are not good at compromises. Again, we just want to do something, okay? And if even with stretches we can do it, we will.
You know what I've been trying to do more recently is like not even care about like what the final number is, like when I'm talking to the client, and just kind of almost wanting to just like start, because if they have like relatively enough money, it's like, let's just start with like strategy. Let's just like figure out what the hell we're making, how we're going to do it. And then once we get to like executing and designing and like all of that, let's get you like a solid number that we know we can like work within. And if you have to go with another agency and like you have all the strategy and you have all the like the heavy lifting upfront work, cool, so be it. It'll end up great. We helped, we got paid, it's wonderful. So like I've been trying to structure like the deals and all of that in that way, because like a lot of the time like the strategy is like a huge bulk of the work. Obviously the visual execution is another huge bulk of the work, and then there's the QA refinement, all of that along the way. But I just want to, I've shifted to just wanting to focus on helping the client. So whatever that result is, just help them.
You know, what's one of the, so I have a few questions to ask you and points to make on what you just said. I think actually pricing the strategy part, it's what marks, let's say, I wouldn't call it the first year in time, okay, but actually in life of an agency. When you start charging for strategy, okay, you're getting there, right? Because I feel that that's something that we never in the first 3-4 years, we never charged for strategy. We wrote it in the proposal, but we never charged for strategy.
Yeah, you just give it away for free.
Yeah, pretty. Of course, we wouldn't sign strategy just for free and nothing else. But in a website, in an e-commerce, in anything, okay, we would just consider the general budget that we had for that kind of project in terms of design and development. We wouldn't consider the strategy. And I think that's funny thinking about it now, given that we started doing branding simply because after doing all that free strategy, we found out people, brands in generally have outdated brandings that don't have any kind of assets or any kind of disposition to go digital, right? And therefore, we would be there doing double the work with the design team because in strategy, we noticed that they didn't have anything to work with, right? So that's one of the things that makes me laugh a lot.
The other part of the question I think that I had for you was just like, what are the kind of main core pieces that you think about when you're pricing out the creative work? So obviously you have a certain amount of team, you have to hit minimums, you have, you have to know how long this is going to take, or prospectively it's going to take. Kind of profit margins that you're trying to operate within. What else are you thinking about?
I also remember the point. So the first thing I consider is that is if the project is completely manageable in-house, okay, which was the point from before as well, in the sense that if we are to outsource a part of the project, we like to be very clear about it with the client, first of all. Second of all, it's not going to be a core part of the project. I never like to be the middleman. As much as I was never good with numbers, I don't like explaining budgets. I give a very detailed upfront explanation of the budget. I don't like bartering, as we were saying before, as I don't like calling others' work as my own. And so I think let's say the first thing I consider again is the potential need for external professionals. Okay. And in that case, I stop everything. I reach out to them, get a quoting, or if I don't work with them often, if I do, I already have an idea of what they would ask and ask for that. And then it's very simply the length of the project, okay, and the kind of project we're working on. This translates in what would normally mean technologies, right? But for me, given that the stacks are quite fixed in a sense, depending on the project. We have a certain stack for an experiential website. We have a certain stack for, a corporate website, which never varies. We do, in terms of technological stack, we do very similar websites, let's say, which are then very different depending on the visuals and stuff. So I think it's literally just the people that we have, the time that will go into it, and the kind of add-ons that the project has. Let's say we've been working on a lot more complicated corporate websites recently. I think it's been a great school, okay, for us, because it brought us to a more narrow, strict kind of development. But I think in pulling through engaging interactive design, web design into those kind of projects, that's where we differentiate ourselves completely from the rest of the market, right? In that we can bring the same or incredibly similar experience to a one-pager of sorts into a website that has potentially 400 pages, is connected to a product manager that handles 300 products, where we pull everything from it into an engaging, beautiful visual design for the product page and everything. I think in that it's an incredible achievement that probably only people from our industry will notice. Okay, but that to us, starting from advertising this winery in Apulia with 5 wines, okay, it's mind-blowing to me how we can do that right now, maintaining the same standard of quality. So generally, sorry, I went on this example, but in general, it's a lot of gut feeling on one side, and that's the differential, let's call it, from what would be right to ask to what we could ask, and therefore your margin, in a way, what we would call margin. And then it's simply timing how many people are working on that and what kind of project it is. Nothing more, nothing less.
I actually like that you do like this is what we believe that it's worth, and just say the number, shut up, hear the response from them, and then go from there. Because I mean, if you've done this long enough, the amount of time, the capabilities of the team. There's always some sort of like thing that kind of goes wrong, or is like you don't think about. So like having like a little bit of padding in there to like accommodate that kind of stuff. And it really is the experience of like, you've done this so many times, you kind of just get a feel for it.
There was a time, I don't know if you have ever done that. We would give scissors, you call it as well in English, like that. So you would give a starting price and a final price. Say I'd sell a project for in the budget we would write 50 to 60,000 euros. Yeah. Did you ever do that?
Yeah, we do that all the time. So
I never do that anymore. Tell me what's your reasoning, because I want to know, and I want to compare it with what our reasoning was when we did that, and when we stopped though.
So I think it's like we do that when we're like factoring like the scope of what it could be. And then we always end up, once we know like how much they have, what their needs are. So it's like, this is the price to get them like interested and in the door. And then we end up refining it to some exact number, because having some mystery number that makes no sense. It's like, is it this or is it this? Just give me a number. Like no one wants to pay some imaginary range. They just want to pay for one thing. So we use that to like, here's the ballpark.
Yeah.
Let's refine it once we know what the hell we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I think that's a working strategy. We stopped. I wouldn't tell you why. I know at a certain point we stopped. But I think in this case, we're getting into very specific parts of budgeting. Right? We started from, okay, you should ask what's your word and stuff, very general stuff, and we're getting into very specific stuff. And I think the more and more you get into specifics, the more and more the type of client and the culture, let's say, matters in it. I would never provide a scissor to an Italian partner, okay, because I would know 100% that we are shooting for that low end, 100%. There's no way I'm asking the high end, and not even in the middle. Well, at the same time, for possibly other kind of projects, but I've never had the chance because we started just asking straight prices. Maybe for other kind of clients, it would work differently. There was this time, and again, no scissors in the middle, but we had the chance a few years ago to work with a Saudi Arabia client. Okay, it's not as rewarding creatively because there's no challenge, but it was probably the best project in the last 2 years. We literally pitched the project. It was 3D and a reel, a 3D reel on top of steels and stuff like that. Beautiful, just visually beautiful, nothing else to it. I think we got maybe 1 point of feedback, okay, and in a month we had closed quite a decent budget. So if it happens to you, anyone who's listening, to get a client from Saudi Arabia, most of the times ask your high end, and it will work out. They also they generally fall in love with the authority that you have if you're a creative. So
that's really good. That actually probably could be taken away for anything. I mean, like, you're supposed to be an authority. They're coming to you for the specific reasons of accomplishing a specific goal that they cannot achieve on their own.
Yeah, so it's I think it's very cultural. I think in any company comes to you as a studio or as an agency because they need something that they can do.
Yeah.
But if like, and that's true for Italians are certain that they can do it better than you, or at least that they know 80% of what you know. Like, they're paying you for the 20%, and every time you have to teach them, no, you're paying me for the 90% you don't know, and I'll show you why you don't know that 90%, right? So that's a very, very cultural. I think it's very detached, because with a very engaged client, when you actually produce something successful on one side and successful for you, which means it makes you proud. I think that's incredibly rewarding. When you don't have those kind of variants, it's less rewarding in a sense. But sometimes you need those kind of clients. So an easy win is needed sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, it's great for the ego. It's great for the wallet.
It can be like this. Yeah. Okay.
That is an amazing feeling. One thing that you had mentioned that I wanted to ask you more about was that your upbringing and that you had to kind of form metaphorical blacks or whites, no grays. In a not so serious way, you had mentioned creating multiple personalities. So I was wondering if that ties into anything, or do you think that
it does. It does.
Okay.
The true. It's like I think it's my handle on Instagram and somewhere else, like on Twitter and stuff like that. That's the person who has the confidence to ask the budgets that we're speaking about, to ask to pitch the projects we're speaking about, to go up, say, before we started working with them, to the Gucci of sorts, to the Ferragamo of sorts, and say, this is the right idea. And with that little overtone of, I understand it, you don't, this is the right thing, right? I'm not normally that person. I think that's the mask, like I said, that I put up when I have to work with that. But I have other marks. I like acting. I don't act.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm not an actor myself, but I like acting the role, right?
Mm.
When I'm at work, I do that kind of role. I like to embody it fully. When I'm at home, I do something else. When I'm outside with my friends, I have this very underground kind of personality, which is Drake Cobra, okay, which it's all over the place. I have all those things, and I like to act those roles, to live all these moments fully, in a sense. I like to have fun when I have fun. I like to be professional / knowledgeable in what I do when I work, or when I'm talking about things I understand things about, and stuff like that. So yeah.
I think I guess in essence, we all have to wear different masks for different things. I mean, you're different for when you're with your family, with your friends, and I think in a way it's actually really important in business, because you may be personally a little bit shy, maybe a little bit introverted, but you can't always be that way in business, especially in like a fast moving culture like the United States, or other parts of the world. So I mean, like, just like thinking to yourself, acting out the role, how would I handle this situation if I was Don Draper? That's a very different perspective. And I do that too. I'm like, okay, get into the mindset, like put on some music, like pretend you have a whiskey in your hand, and
That's
just
the only way. I think there's no one I spoke with in this industry who doesn't have an imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
to some degree, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the only way where you can actually do what you would like to do, in a sense, is for that hour, for those 2 hours, put on that mask and be the person that you would like to be, and then get it. I was telling you earlier, we discussed a lot about budget. I hate talking about money. I'm no good at all talking about money, right? The only thing I can do is when this accountant is calling me when I'm on vacation, asking me to reduce the price by 40%, is put on that mask and say, what kind of question is this? You shouldn't even call me for this, and hang up, because that's what I would like to answer in a way. So I think that's very helpful. And at the end of the day, it's not even say a defense mechanism or anything like that. It's just asking what you're worth on that case.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, putting that imposter syndrome for 5 minutes, an hour, 2 hours into the closet, right?
Yeah.
I'll handle the imposter syndrome when I'm at home alone, right? And there in catharsis, thinking about myself, but not when I'm actually doing stuff.
Well, do you have any tips, or how can the audience kind of do this exercise for themselves? Like, any notes or thoughts for if they are introverted or want to get better at this as a skill?
First of all, no one should ask me for life advice. That's the first disclaimer I want to put out. Literally no one. I think everyone comes from such a different background, right? And we live so many lives into the single life that we have. I think now the more and more I think I have like 5 personalities right now that I use at times, aside from my normal self. And most of these are becoming more and more extroverted. And therefore, I'm becoming more extroverted. But it's just I hate saying cliche things, and I find myself saying so many cliche things. I don't know how to marry those two things. But it's that by taking a single step every time in pushing yourself a little bit more, in being extroverted or acting like an extroverted, I think in time you actually gather more and more of that field. You will still feel all the things that you're feeling, probably. There's a whole there's a whole industry to work on that, and hopefully everyone should. It's basic, I'd say, well-being, I think, going to a psychologist or whatever. But aside from that, it's just doing that little thing. And I love so much when I see teammates of mine that in time, in the years, opened up themselves from maybe a situation where they wouldn't feel comfortable saying something to a situation where they feel more comfortable. Okay, they're not extroverted now. You won't change from being an introverted to an extroverted person in a year, in 2 years. but you can be better. You can be better, or at least you can feel better in saying what you think.
Agree.
This happens to everybody, to everyone, and I want. What I'll ask you one thing to make this example. Have you worked a lot more in this industry before Rogue, and have you worked under someone else as a junior?
Yeah. So I started Rogue. I was freelancing 2 years prior. So just kind of like working with a lot of different agencies as a freelancer. And then prior to that, I worked in agency jobs for roughly like 3 years, maybe a little bit more. So I was just trying to get my footing, see what I liked and didn't like, and try to figure out how I could do this on my own. And obviously, like, you learn through like fucking up a lot. You really have to screw up a lot in order to get to a point where you know what the heck you're doing. And that's okay. That's just part of the journey. And you had a question in there.
How many times during those 3 years, okay, you because you were, let's say you were, and I think this tells what kind of person, if you're an introvert or an extrovert, right? How many times did you have to keep down the thought, right? That pure opinion that you had on something, that pure response that you could have on something, simply because you weren't in the position to do so?
Oh, I mean, like, all the time. So like multiple cases of that. So like there was feelings like inside like the agency job where I wanted to say something, but I had to hold my tongue.
Mm.
And then I would have to tell the person after, like, my thought and opinion, like the creative director, etc. But also like trying to figure out, like, I mean, I would get so nervous before like calls talking about budget, and I'd have to like keep those feelings like under wraps, and I'd have to just focus on like, no, just say what you have to say, have the hard conversation, like figure this out. Because like it's scary, it's not fun unless you're like a person who really likes the confrontation back and forth, which there are plenty of people who do, not me, but you have to choke down those feelings and do the hard work, because in essence, it's your job. If you want to start a studio, be a freelancer, you got to fight for your right to your self-worth.
And I think it's that thing that in trying to be an extrovert, right, in keeping that thing that you keep down, okay, if you feel like you're imposing yourself to keep it down because you're an introvert and you want to get it out, you don't want to get it out, it's a cancerous thing, you know. It's in the moment that you get it out, or that you know that you are capable of getting it out, and maybe you decide not to, because either it's the smart move or it would be impolite, because being an extrovert doesn't mean that you're a douchebag that says everything. Right? And that's very important. That's very important.
Yeah, that's very important.
But I think in that it makes life so much easier, even in acting that role for a little bit in your day. And I think one great exercise is when, and one great telling sign of who's an introvert and an extrovert is when the phone rings, who goes to answer the phone. Introverts never answer the phone. I think hotel school paid a lot in this, because they obligated me to answer the phone, and therefore they got me
training.
I hate answering the phone. I would mumble the first times, right? Now it's all better. But yeah,
I think a couple of things that you can do to get slightly better at this, and it's putting yourself out there, but there is one exercise from Noah Kagan, the entrepreneur who started AppSumo. And his challenge is, whenever you go out to coffee, ask for 10% off. And think about how ridiculous that is. Yeah. Ask for 10% off of a coffee, and then have to have a reason. So he says, like, the first time you get to say, oh, I'm doing this challenge and I'm trying to like improve my communication skills, but you only get to use that lifeline once.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that's an exercise. Another one is going to an improv comedy class, because it forces you to like have thoughts and work on the fly. Another way you could do this is just like literally playing make-believe and playing Dungeons and Dragons, which does the same thing, but it's at least in a social setting where you know the people, in theory. Yeah, so that's 2 ways to get yourself kind of into the role of someone else and think on the fly. And I think that's really helpful, both of those things.
you literally described one of my nightmares with the coffee discount example. I'm incapable in any restaurant setting to ask for any kind of discount. Yeah,
It's
but
so
yeah, that's a great food. That's the reason why that's a great exercise. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean you can do it very simply. Like I think the simplest way is like when you're leaving the house, just like saying as an exercise, like I will talk to one stranger. That could be simple. That could be just like the checkout person at the grocery store. But talking to one stranger, and like it's so easy to not talk to anyone, or not be social and just put yourself out. But
World, yeah.
yeah, just breaking that habit is, I think, an easy first step.
That's very true. It's a lot of work. No one teaches us when we're growing up how much work is working on yourself. Everything. What old sentences I'm saying right now?
When you become adult, you start working.
Grandpa Filippo, yeah. That's
Well, Grandpa, what books did you used to read in your day, and how has science fiction impacted you as a person?
So I read quite a few books. I think science fiction gave me everything. Gave me fantasy. Gave me a way to think in a broader sense towards what I considered real at the time, towards what I considered possible. There are each person, I think, has different things that lead up their brain and said, "Oh, this is possible," or "Oh, is this even a profession?" When you were growing up, you were in elementary school or even high school. Did you think graphic designer was a work, developer was a work? I didn't. Okay, I had no idea of this. I was in hotel school. I thought all of it was like you either have your hammer and work on metal, right, or you work in restaurants and make food for people who eat their metal scrap with a hammer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so the moment I saw a specific friend, Elisa, who actually, for somebody who got me into this world, working on this, I said, "Yeah, I did this," and I looked at it and said, "Okay, yeah, this is cool. Can I do it?" I think that was very eye-opening, and the same thing was for science fiction back in the day. So it gave my mind space to travel. Initially, I think, Dune is my favorite science fiction novel ever. Just a masterpiece in itself. In 2 weeks, the second part of the movie by Villeneuve is coming out finally. So I'm very hyped for that. But in general, science fiction in it, and fantasy novels like Lord of the Rings, like Game of Thrones a lot later, and even minor stuff, which then brought me into everything that manga, say, like shonen manga, so for young people. And then with the taste, when you experience a lot of a certain media, okay, be it websites, be it books, novel, in this case science fiction novels or manga, you keep improving your taste.
Yeah.
Okay? And in that, I think I found a lot of inspiration. I think in very high-end, mature Japanese publications, manga seinen, as they call it, it's where I found a lot of my current visual references, in a sense. I know that I enjoy black and white a lot, and I don't need to ask myself why. Okay, simply because most of my imagination for like 10 years of my life has been in black and white, right? And then there's the other part where the narrative and the love for words and how words are shaped together, and why I get so emotional or angry or cringe when I hear certain kind of words, like the fireworks proposal before, or when I hear about wordsmiths or whatever they are. I cringe when I hear those things because I'm very opinionated about words and how they are put together, right?
Yeah.
And I think in this case, it's not my favorite universe in itself, imaginatively, but Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is by far the best narrative I've ever read, because it's just so clever. And that made me realize with words itself, and by pairing words, you could make people dream, giggle, laugh, just by how you put together words, and not because of the scenes that you're creating, right, and the situations, but just because of the words. I think I read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy first volume at least once every year or something like that, because it's just so refreshing. Every time I read it, I'm just amazed at how great he was at writing. And that's something I try to bring when I write. I'll ask you something. Sorry, this is taking us from one coast to the other, but whatever. Does it also happen to you that the things generally that you're most proud of in your work, if you were to think very, very deeply and on the moment, are generally not great things? I'll give you an example. What I'm generally, when I'm at work and I feel like I'm the most proud sometimes, or most of the time, is like I've written the best email or internal communication to the studio I've ever written, like the most clever one. If I send an invite to the company dinner, let's say to the studio dinner, and I create the best name that instead of being 3 words, it's like a text long, okay, and it makes me laugh. I said, okay, yeah, I just created something amazing, okay, and I feel more rewarded by that than having the project for Ferragamo or whoever. I don't know if that's the same for you.
You know, I when I think about it, I think like the biggest wins don't have to necessarily be big, like you're saying. I feel like the most excited or fulfilled when there's like magic little moments that happen. It might not be like the project is released and it's launched, but like when the client will say like one thing about one tiny thing that we did, and it's like, oh, that little tiny detail like impressed someone. And it's like, oh, that was awesome. Or when someone responds back in an email and they're like, hell yeah, love that. Or like that, like those light me up. It's not like, oh, we won this award. It's like, I don't,
Yeah,
that's a byproduct of all the other things.
exactly. You said it perfectly. I think that's this one answer we gave to this article. That it's it will be out, I think, when the podcast goes live. That will come out in a few days on Communication Arts, about a recent website we did for Tuscan wines, and we published this website for the clients like a year and a half ago, and we just set it up for nominations around the internet. And when I looked at it, and Communication Arts reached out to have this interview, I looked at it and I saw this transition that we have when we go into this is like a very huge wine company in Sicily that has like 5 locations. Okay, go into each of these locations. You have like these 4-stage staggered animation, which when you see it, it's completely its flow is perfect and everything, just linear graphic design. And I saw it is like these 5 stages, and it was like I said, okay, yeah, this is the best single graphic animation staggered animation we've ever done. And I was like this, and I wrote in the interview, I don't want to be childish, but this is literally, when I look at it, the best animation we've ever done. And we have worked on far more majestic, let's say, projects, right? But when I looked at the animation, I said, okay, yeah, this is the peak that we will ever. Anyone notices this, okay, they will understand what we do, and I will be happy. But just it's the
I love those magic moments when it's like you care so much about one little thing. It's amazing.
And you don't care that, and you don't even care that people will notice it. It's just it has to be that way, because otherwise I wouldn't be satisfied with myself. So,
exactly. Yeah, I love that. Like doing it for you, and then if anyone else notices, that's great. But do it for you.
If you amaze a peer of yours with one of your projects, it means that probably the intention and the love behind it carries, right? And it was there. I felt with you. I told you when we met for the first time, the small shop that you set up for Rogue in the beginning. I fell in love with it. I never forgot Rogue from that point on. Okay, and also A Night in the Woods recently. I told you already. I love that project. And it's in not compromising on that, also on the quality that I think the success long term comes. So
gotta sweat the small stuff. It matters.
Giving love to the actual project and doing more than what the budget requires is what makes the great projects, and therefore brings more great projects. I'm saying the same things over and over again, but you're getting me a bit a bit dreamy on the beautiful projects that we do. We're quite lucky.
Well, you guys do really amazing stuff. There's no doubt about that.
Like,
I mean, it all shows, and it'll all be like flashing on screen as I'm talking, and all the animations will be there. But let's do one more. I would say, what are your go-to top hip hop albums? So we could do that as one, or we could go into what have you learned from being the host of your own podcast? So we can go either way.
I think I'll go, if you want, with the hip hop albums. I think it's very thematic today because Kanye released another album. I think it's quite dangerous to like Kanye nowadays. I like his music, more than him, unfortunately. But then again, probably the best hip hop record of all time is My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. There's no single album that I could listen from start to finish and then back from start to finish like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I'm completely in love with what Kanye did at the time. And then there's another one. I wouldn't place it in the best. Of course, I love so much of the production from Jay-Z, from Kendrick Lamar, from Eminem. Of course, I actually grew up with Eminem. I got into hip hop because I was listening to punk and rock. And when Linkin Park did their collaboration with Jay-Z, with what was it, Reloaded, I think, I started enjoying. I think for many people of my year and around there happened that same thing happened with Numb and Core, pretty much went skyrocketed, right? And so I got into hip hop at that time. So I have Eminem on my easily on my top two, Kanye, and I'd have to say Kendrick Lamar recently.
What's your favorite Kendrick album?
So I started, I was very young. Let me bring back the name of the album. MAADCT, Good Kid.
Yeah.
That's when I discovered Kendrick as well. I think it was incredibly poetic, very underground at the time and everything. If I have to see the whole production and see the majestic thing that he brought about with Damn, I would have to say, the reason that Damn is probably his all-around best album. But in Mad City is probably the truest I've ever seen. I also forgot my actual favorite rapper and artist, which is Kid Cudi. With Man on the Moon. 1, 2, and 3 recently. I had lost all hope, I must say. But Man on the Moon 3, it's a fantastic album for melancholic people in general. Like Kid Cudi used to be. I love people who fail. Kid Cudi is incredibly human, With the Man on the Moons, he always strikes an incredible target. I liked all 3 of those. I liked Kids See Ghosts a lot, but simply like Kanye as well. And then he has these albums like Spitting Bullet Through Heaven and stuff like that, which are a bunch. And you see it right from the get-go. You see like 20 tracks, that last, I don't know, from 1 minute to 4, whatever length, that they are clearly put together in a range with no thought and everything. And when he does those things. But aside from that, I have too much love for Kid Cudi and what he meant for me growing up. So,
for me, with hip hop, it's the storytelling is so poetic and beautiful. It can range on the spectrum from like very aggressive to very like loving and affectionate, and that could be romantic love, platonic love, and everything in between. And I think the storytelling really captures me, and that with the kind of DIY culture, like slashing up beats, the beautiful production of now kind of like professional style, not saying like original roots, but I think the history mixed with all of the storytelling is what really is so captivating. Same thing with like Kendrick Lamar. I think also with Kanye is you can take the man from the art. Him now is a different person than he was, like on the streets of Chicago. Growing up, but he really did innovate hip hop and change it multiple times, and all of his albums sound very, very different. So I think a true artist, whether you can relate to him now, maybe not so much in terms of his personal messaging, but storytelling is there.
Words are cool. Words are cool, and shaping words together is cool. So
it fits perfectly for what we've been talking about, and also just what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, beautiful. But honestly, thank you for being here in the first place, Filippo, because this has been so much fun, and I'm glad that we could find an opportunity to record and talk about all of these pretty essential topics overall, and talk about the studio added. I almost didn't do the hard D. I almost didn't do the hard D. Adoratorio.
Adoratorio, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was like going to smosh it together in like one syllable, but that's the thing. You can't. Adoratorio.
It's a very easy way to get to know people, even if we're at the end right now, to get to know people by telling together the name of the studio. So explaining them how it's said. It's a very easy bridge, By the way, it was my pleasure, incredibly. It amazed me how great of a talk. I wouldn't say not even an interview, a talk. You were bringing up so many, I think, fundamental things, mostly for people who are young in this agency, but also hopefully for other peers that have their skin in the game for a long time, and maybe resonate with some of our experiences, hopefully.
Definitely. And I think like the fundamentals, sometimes it's nice to get a kick in the butt and just to rehear things, just be like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
I actually, compliments. I actually got another saying, which is it's useful to get a punch in the face once in a while. So yeah, that's very true.
There's a lot of lessons in that. Maybe life lessons, but also metaphorical ones.
Yeah, exactly. Both of them.
To the audience, remember that we're all legendary and have an amazing story of our own. So on the journey, take the time to be kind, grind, and unwind. And like we talked about today, you got to do a lot of work on yourself in order to grow, to gain that self-confidence. Maybe do a little bit of acting and put your best foot forward when you feel a little bit scared to talk about the numbers. Let's make the world a better and more creative place to live. And Filippo, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And I wait for you in Italy, in Brescia. Okay?
Yes. I will bring my wife. We will wine. We will dine. Yeah, it'll be amazing.
Everyone is welcome. Thank you so much.
That you can take away on your creative journey.
Yeah.
Journey. My wife is dying in the background. I'll just do a little. She's running. Versatile journey. I just jumped back to Brooklyn, New York.